We waited impatiently for passengers to show up at the airport's baggage area. My brother-in-law Bob was there with his two daughters, Danica, 9, and Louis, 7. My son David, 12, and my daughter Sheila, 9, were with me. The children held a large sign above their heads that read, "Welcome home, mummies." 2 weeks ago, my wife, Mandy, and her sister Helen went on vacation to the beaches of BC. This is a very good way to escape the cold Minnesota winters, especially in January. Finally, the plane's passengers began to appear at the door. The children burst into screams when they saw their mothers. Both women were gorgeous with their beautiful tans and beautiful smiles. Mandy kissed David and Sheila and hugged them tightly. Then she turned to me, and I was rewarded with a hot kiss. I hugged her and hardly let go. "I really missed you, honey. Wait until the evening, honey," she whispered in my ear. "I'll show you how much I missed you." And that night, she certainly proved it. After 15 years of marriage, she knows a thing or two about me. One of the things she knows is how much I find tan lines. A turn on after the kids went to bed. We went straight to the bedroom. "Honey, go to bed and be ready to meet me when I come out of the bathroom." In an instant, I found myself waiting in bed. A few minutes later, Mandy came out of the bathroom wearing a thong. Mandy's most attractive feature has always been her very beautiful face. A face made for smiles. Wherever she went, she had the most beautiful face. However, she herself was her own body's worst critic. She felt that she was too short, too thin. Her breasts weren't big enough, her hips were too thick. A side effect of both pregnancies was that my breasts became larger and fuller, and the thong bikini definitely showed off her beautiful curves. But the best was yet to come. Mandy stood at the foot of the bed, showing off her beautiful golden tan from the beach. First, she slowly pulled down her thong, revealing a white patch of skin at the front. There were faint tan lines where the straps of the thong were, but the spot in her private area was the same milky white as when she left. Mine got excited by this vision. She slowly unbuttoned her bikini top, letting the material hang over her chest. Finally, the bikini fell to the floor, revealing the white globes of her cute little breasts. I immediately crawled to the foot of the bed, grabbed her by the waist, and pulled her towards me, kissing her and caressing her body. She got excited from my caresses, and it only took me a few minutes to get her to her first peak. Several times I simply inhaled the musky scent of her body. "I missed you so much," she said. "And I missed you. It's so sweet. I'm really glad to be back home," she replied. We spent a good part of the night getting to know each other again. A few days later, Mandy was cleaning the bathtub while I was in the hallway, enjoying the beautiful view of her moving ass. Mandy sensed my presence and looked over her shoulder. "Why are you standing there?" "I look at your ass and wonder what I could do if you weren't wearing pants and if the kids were already in bed." I answered honestly. "Pervert," she giggled. "You're teasing." She stood up and came towards me. She took off her plastic gloves, threw them over her shoulder, straight into the sink, and teasingly came towards me, rotating her hips. She pressed her whole body against me, feeling my excitement with her stomach. "That's how you can tease," she said. Normally, I would have pressed my hips down to increase contact, but I couldn't. A few seconds earlier, a feeling of fear came over me. I didn't know why, but there was definitely something wrong with the picture in front of me. But for the life of me, I didn't know what it was. Mandy is tired of me not responding to my teasing like all men. "Only words and no actions," she said, thrusting her hips for the last time. She turned and grabbed the gloves. "I think I'd better finish the bath." It was then that I realized what a small detail had struck my subconscious. I turned pale, turned and left. "I'm going to the garage," I muttered, not caring whether Mandy hurt me or not. In the garage, I sat on a workbench, lost in my thoughts. I had a bad feeling about what I had just discovered. Did Mandy cheat on me while she was in busy? I'm sure of one thing. If Mandy tried just a little, she wouldn't have any problems finding a man willing to sleep with her. And what I saw only made sense if that's what she tried while on vacation with her sister. What will I do if I find out that she cheated on me? The answer was obvious. I'll leave her without a second thought. It will hurt. Well, that was already painful, but it's even worse because of our 2 children. Why did she do this to me, except any form of violence? I said. Bob didn't answer my question. A shame. I want to embarrass them in front of their loved ones. You know, our father-in-law Tom is crazy about his 2 girls, I told Bob. Bob agreed. This is a well-known fact. But you also know what he hates most in life even more than the IRS. They will be in your rooms. 2011 and 203, and everything is already set up for both audio and video. I'll have everything when you land tomorrow. The next morning, we all met at the airport during the flight. Tom switched seats with my son David and sat next to me. Listen, son, don't think I'm just a stupid old guy. He told me you and Bob look like you're heading to a funeral. You two are up to something. What is the problem? I'm very sorry that I kept you in the dark. Tom, I replied, I know that you love your daughters more than anything in the world. I'm afraid to say that I have very bad news. They're cheating on you guys, aren't they? He asked point blank. Yes, I answered. They slept with 2 guys. They met and had sex for 2 weeks while they were traveling. Tobias, I have a private investigator collecting all the evidence we need for a divorce, and we will file it as soon as we catch them in bed with their lovers. Tom put his hand on my shoulder in a fatherly way. I'm very sorry, son. I know how much it hurts. I wish the few years they lived with me were enough to make some sense in their minds. But I fear that being raised by their mother for most of their adolescence has been a constant bad influence on them. Tom began to cry. I didn't know I could suffer so much again, he said quietly, having come to his senses. A knowing smile appeared on Bob's face. Cheating wives, said Bob. Tom, the ex-wife and mother of Mandy and Helen, have been cheating on him throughout their marriage. He later found out after the divorce she received custody of the 2 girls, the house, generous alimony and child support, and most of his company. He had to borrow a lot of money to buy her share of the business. It took years to get his company back on sound financial footing. Now he sold the business and lived well, but alone. He often visited his daughters and grandchildren. I explained my plan. We only had 2 weeks left to act like loving husbands. Do as I do, Bob. I explained, catch a few colds and work a lot late into the night. You'll be too sick or too tired to perform in bed. Bring your intimacy to once a week for show, and soon we will be free of them. Of course, I returned very late that evening. Mandy was already in bed, and I was just faking a terrible headache. I thought for a while about the plan of revenge, but soon fell asleep. I already knew about the impending betrayal when Mandy told me that she and Helen were planning a shopping trip to Chicago. I told her it was a great idea. She expected to stay at a hotel in the city center to show my love and support. I even booked the room myself using our joint credit card. The room was reserved for Mr. and Mrs. Johnston, double occupancy, as Helen and Mandy were to share a room. The girls were overjoyed. Bob also offered to pay for the room. This room was reserved for Mr. and Mr. Rocket, double occupancy, as Helen and Mandy were to share this room. Bob and I arranged everything so that each of them thought that we were renting one room. Although we knew the girls were not going to share a room for them, we had no idea their lovers would be there. The girls planned to take Friday off, fly to Chicago in the morning, and return on a late flight from Chicago on Sunday. The following week, I spoke with Tom Raines, Mandy's father. I told him I wanted to surprise the 2 girls by bringing the kids and himself to Chicago for a family reunion. Since the trip was just 2 weeks after our 15th wedding anniversary, Tom thought it was a great idea. I asked Tom if he could book 3 rooms. He thought it would be a big surprise. Bob and I were outraged by our wives' behavior. The morning we dropped them off at the airport, they acted like 2 schoolgirls on their way to their first date, laughing at nothing and everything. They were filled with nervous energy at the security gate. We kissed them on the cheek. They didn't even notice that neither Bob nor I said I love you to them. Bob was driving us back to town. I took my cell phone and quickly called. "Hi, this is Johnston," I said to the private detective I hired. "They'll land in Chicago soon. Is everything in place?" "Yes," Alan White replied. He stood up and returned to his place. Alan White met us at the Chicago airport. He came to me with 2 envelopes, one for Bob and one for me. They contained a set of incriminating photographs, as well as a DVD recording of the events of the previous night. He informed us that the process server would contact us shortly and that his operative was monitoring the 2 bedrooms. To us, am I such a bad husband? These questions swirled around in my head for the rest of the evening. Although I had a very strong feeling that she had cheated on me, I had absolutely no evidence that she had done so. How can I know for sure about this deception? If it happened 3,000 miles away in another country. I can't confront her because she'll just deny it. Will I be able to stand up to her sister? I played with this idea for some time, but the two sisters were always equally stubborn. All my life, I knew sisters. If one cheated, the other did too. I had to talk to Bob about my suspicions. Sometime later, I heard Mandy calling me and returned home. "What were you doing in the garage all this time?" Mandy asked. "More than 2 hours. You'll catch a cold." "Oh, just tidying up a little," I said simply. Then one thought came to my mind. I didn't want to sleep with her. In any case, I already have a cold that hit me this morning. I think I'll sleep on the couch for a few days. I could see that Mandy didn't like it very much. "Okay, I'll make you some herbal tea before you go to bed. Chamomile should help," she said after Mandy went to bed. I was left alone with my thoughts. My mind was jumping randomly from one idea to another. Why did she do this? What can I do? Should I talk to Bob to find out if Helen cheated? At some point, I realized that there was a surefire way to find out if Mandy was cheating. She became addicted to keeping in touch with all her friends and acquaintances. Mandy has at least 600 or 700 friends on Facebook. There's even more in her Yahoo address book. If she contacted someone in biz, I'm sure she exchanged information via email so they could keep in touch. However, I don't know if she will use her current email account. Since we know each other's passwords, I finally fell asleep as a plan began to form. The next day, I was very tired and had difficulty concentrating on work. I made an appointment with a divorce lawyer the next day, Friday. Then I called Bob and asked him to meet me for lunch. He was surprised but agreed. I told him about my discovery. At first he laughed at me, but I soon convinced him that it was serious. He will try to find out if Helen cheated on him, claiming a bad case of the flu. I left the office early and returned home at 3 p.m. immediately. I installed keyboard tracking software on our home computer. A week passed before I was able to find out the truth. Mandy logged into another email account using the username BeachDreams1975 for password consisted of the names and ages of our children. Chev92. Just a few days after returning from biz, she was in daily contact with Brad. The emails were over the top for both Mandy and Helen. Helen also slept with a guy named Steve. I forwarded all the emails sent and received by Mandy to myself and then erased all traces of my surveillance. I then sent Bob several emails from my email account. I learned that they had sex almost from the first day and vice, and they even switched partners several times. They were already talking about meeting again next month in Chicago. The girls will pretend they're going shopping and the two idiots, longtime friends, will pretend they're going to watch the Chicago Blackhawks. A quick search of Mandy's Facebook page and Helen's page turned up two recent friends, Brad Simmons and Steve Reiner, both from Illinois, but if they're married. I have you in my hands, you idiots. I had a difficult task to complete. Bob denied that Helen and Mandy were cheating. He kept my suspicions a secret, but never truly believed that his loving wife would cheat on him. I understood his position. Looking at Mandy's behavior towards me and the children, it was hard to believe that she was going to end the marriage. She seemed so loving and caring that I sometimes believed myself to be wrong. It definitely helped as I had to resume regular sex. I called Bob at work. "Hi Bob, this is Jack." I said, "Can you log into your personal email account from work?" "Certainly. Did you send me something?" "Yes. Read all the letters and call me back." I waited half an hour for his call. "Damn thing," Bob shouted over the phone. "I'll kick her to the curb tonight. What a creature. I love this woman. I would do anything for her." "Calm down, Bob." I asked him, "I have a plan and I need your help. We can't let them know what we know." "I can't. I just cannot. I have a need to hurt her very much," said Bob. "We'll do it, Bob. We'll do it. I can promise you that. But for now, pull yourself together. Call home and leave a message saying you're working late tonight. We'll meet in a pub in the old town and I'll tell you about my plans." Later that evening, Bob and I held our first war council. Bob, what could harm our wives besides a kick in the ass? His assistant will tell us about the most compromising and awkward moment to break into the lovers. The wives of Simmons and Reiner will receive similar packages by midday. Bob and I asked Tom and Alan to look after the children for a while. We needed to see how bad it was. My heart sank when I saw Mandy in every sexual position imaginable. There was even a double-painted photo from two idiots as far as we could see. They had unprotected sex. Bob and I will need to get tested for STDs in Minneapolis. Alan White then called his assistant to see if the hotel was clear for us. The lovers went out for lunch, so everything was in order. Tom ordered 3 numbers. Bob and I requested an additional keycard for rooms 2011 and 203, which were registered in our names. Both keycards were issued after the clerk checked our IDs. We informed the receptionist that our children had planned a surprise so that he would not alert our wives. We all went up to the 3rd floor where our rooms were located after that. After an hour of waiting, Alan White called. They returned from lunch and are now in their rooms. They switched partners. Mandy is with Reiner now and Helen is with Simmons. He said, "I'm in the lobby and the process server just showed up." "I'll send it to your room," I said. I turned off the phone and got out of bed. "It's time to go, guys," I said cheerfully to the children. "Be careful and don't forget what I told you, Sheila. And you too. David, Grandpa, and I will enter the room first, and when I give you the signal, you will shout, 'Surprise!' Mom." "Understood. No problem," Dad said. David added, "And under no circumstances do you enter the room until I tell you to." "Yes, that's right. We understand everything, Dad." "Go," I said. We walked up the stairs and stopped in front of room 2011. I inserted the key and quietly opened the door. Tom and I went inside the 2 children behind us. However, they did not wait. As soon as the door opened, they shouted, "Surprise, Mom, we are here." Mandy had sex with Reiner. Our appearance was truly a surprise. A rare rush to the trousers lying on the floor. Quickly put them on, grabbed the rest of his clothes, and ran out of the room. Well, at least he reacted quickly. Mandy jumped out of bed and tried to gather her clothes. No. That this can't be true? No. What are you doing here? She exclaimed. Hey, Mommy's naked. Sheila, who squeezed herself between Tom and me. I snapped my finger. The process server entered the room. Mandy Johnston. He asked, "Is this my mother?" To the only naked woman? Sheila said, trying to be helpful. The processing server handed her an envelope. "You've been served," he said, and took a photo of Mandy holding the envelope, attempting to hide her breasts. He left. "Come on, children. Let's leave Mom while she gets dressed." We left the room. Mandy was crying on the floor. She knew all too well what was in the envelope. Bob and his children were in the hallway. "Bob," I said, "this is your show now." Things didn't go well with Helen Simmons. She was the aggressive type. When he was pulled away from sex, he became very angry at the intruders. He hit Tom in the face. Bob needed no more incentive to express his disappointment. The first thing Simmons felt was Bob punching him and Helen scratching his face in defense of her father. It was one decent gesture on her part to protect her old man. I walked into the room, grabbed Simmons and threw him into the bathroom, away from the kid's eyes, throwing his clothes after him. "Get dressed and get out of here," I said. Tom, Bob, and the children left the room without any shame. Helen followed them, covered only with a blanket. Her father turned to her with a stern face. "Go back to the room and get dressed like the little girl she was at heart." She turned and walked into the bedroom. The server process had fled during the argument, but was now standing in the doorway. "Holland Row," he said, and handed her the envelope. "Dear served." We all went back upstairs. The original plan was to spend the night there and talk to our wives one last time. But I wasn't in the mood to be in the same room with Mandy. I grabbed our luggage and told the kids we were going home. Tom told us he wanted to stay. He had a lot to tell his daughters. Bob and his children returned with us to Minneapolis 4 months later. Despite Mandy's numerous pleas for forgiveness, the judge reviewed our case and granted an uncontested divorce. It took Tom a lot of effort to convince Mandy to sign the divorce papers. I also received primary custody of the children, but I did not ask for any money from Mandy. Tom made sure they were well taken care of. Our other assets were divided equally, and I received a generous gift from Tom the following Christmas to get me back on my feet financially, as he explained to me. In any case, it was from the money of Mandy's future inheritance. Bob's divorce went much the same way, except their house was shared property. However, shortly after the divorce, Bob and Helen started dating again, and I'm pretty sure they'll end up getting back together. It's a pity. As far as Mandy and I are concerned, there's no way in hell I'll ever take her back. I kind of believed her when she said she was very sorry for what she did. I also believe that she still loves me. My problem is that her betrayal completely trampled my love for her and left all the love in the dust of her betrayal on the beaches of Biz. I couldn't love her anymore. For the sake of the kids, we're very polite to each other. But that's all I'll ever do. One day, when she was waiting for the children to get ready to go with her, she asked me, "I'm curious, Jack. How did you even know about the stupid thing I did in bass?" "It's my love for 10 lines," I replied. "I don't understand. I was in a bikini all the time. We never went to a nude beach or anything like that. Think about it, Mandy. What did you do every time you cleaned the bathroom with all the necessary chemicals?" I gathered everything I needed, put on plastic gloves, and rolled up my sleeves. She said, "You forgot the one thing you always did." First, I said, "You took off your rings. Engagement ring and wedding ring. There was no tan line on your finger." Thank you for listening to the story. Now, here is another exciting story for you to read. When I left the hospital, I was in a fog. My life had been turned upside down or inside out. As I fell. Now, by a simple DNA test, I could not and did not want to return home. I needed to think. So I headed to a bar near the hospital and ordered a large Bloody Mary. At least once. But I really needed this drink. The bar was empty, so I took my drink, sat at a separate table, and began to think my life as I imagined it was. Now over. I'm Bob. I am 42 years old and have been married to Nancy for 15 years. Nancy is a year younger than me, and we have 2 beautiful little girls, 11-year-old Andrea and 8-year-old Kimberly. Just an hour ago, our life was simple, a little predictable, but full of love and wonderful moments. This has changed dramatically. Of course, I didn't want to lose the girls, but if it came to that, well, in the long run, when my plan came to fruition, it would probably be better for them. Instead of a messy marriage full of resentment and mistrust, it would be better to simply end it and start over. I arrived home and Nancy's Lexus was already in the driveway. As expected. The children were not at home and I could immediately talk to my wife. I'm not an actor, but I managed to hide my true feelings and even put a smile on my face. Returning from work, Nancy was in the kitchen since I was the school principal and she worked as an accountant. We both had a regular schedule and always shared the day-to-day work of the family. It was her day to cook dinner, and she barely glanced at me when I kissed her on the cheek. I got a good look at her. She was still as beautiful as when we met, just a little tighter as we all do over the years. Busy for several minutes, she finally put dinner in the oven and turned to me, sitting at the kitchen table. As always, her green eyes and blonde hair took my breath away. I am considered a handsome man, about 6 feet tall and weighing 180 pounds. And Nancy has always been a very bright and attractive woman. She raised her eyebrows at me and her questioning gaze met my smile. Something sweet or funny? I stood up and hugged her. As I looked down at her, I realized that my height and looks were one of the reasons she allowed me into her life. My hug was followed by a gentle, probing kiss that gained momentum and turned into a hungry French kiss. I paused. "I love you so much. It hurts," I said. "Okay. Now the moment of truth has come. Well, I have very good news. Do you know how much I love my girls? But I always wanted a boy." "Yes," she answered, completely confused. "Well, soon I will become the father of a boy," I said. Nancy was stunned. "What? Oh, I don't understand. What are you talking about? The boy?" "I'm not pregnant. Not with you. But I will become the father of a boy in 5 months if nothing goes wrong." "God forbid," I said, forcing myself to smile. Well, the force of the powerful slap wiped away the smile. This was expected, but it still hurt a lot. "But honey, I love you. It was just an accident. It was just sex." I argued with her, but to no avail. Over the next few hours, Nancy experienced a range of emotions from devastation at the betrayal to anger and rage. The girls were sent straight to their bedroom while Nancy vented her frustration and anger. Soon I packed my suitcase and left the house, never to return. The following week, I was served with divorce papers. The payout was ultimately agreed upon at about $450,000 for me after attorney's fees. Just to be clear, I love these two girls very much and want them to continue to be a part of my future. Dear viewers, thank you for staying with us and supporting our channel. See you again. The reason for divorce is infidelity. It means a lot in our state. I was only given a few hours of visiting time with the girls each week. I often received calls from Nancy, who needed to vent her emotions. She was in pain. Very painful. I never had an answer to her repeated question. Why did you do this to me? To us? All my requests to leave this behind and continue as before were met with a wall of anger and complete refusal. I was a bastard and she would take me to the cleaners. 4 months later, we finally made it to court. My lawyer did challenge her proposal for unequal division of assets as well as her proposed child custody. The judge began to ponder the motive. He asked if I disputed the charge of infidelity. My lawyer was not at all surprised when I said that. Not only did I not dispute the motive for infidelity, but I also provided data to substantiate it. Both the wife's lawyer and the judge were taken by surprise. Do you understand, sir, that with regard to your infidelity, the plaintiff has presented no evidence? And if I rule on this divorce with evidence of infidelity, that will directly affect what my decision will be. The 50-50 division of assets you asked for would be impossible to achieve, the judge explained. May I come, Your Honor? Asked my lawyer. Both lawyers approached the judge. Lawyer Nancy was very pleased with the development of events. However, I saw his smile freeze on his face as my lawyer presented the judge with medical DNA evidence of Nancy's long-term infidelity. I could tell the judge was really angry. After some time, he removed both lawyers from himself. I knew what was going on, but Nancy had a puzzled look on her face. The lawyer whispered something to her. Her face turned pale, as if blood had flowed out of it. She looked at me in complete amazement. The judge said, "This is an unexpected turn of events, and I am really put off by the overall impression that this court has been taken advantage of and deceived. However, I must understand that divorce proceedings are always a way to take revenge on the other spouse." The judge looked at me. "You are playing a dangerous game of perjury, and without this subsequent confession, it could have cost you dearly. Could you take a moment to explain, Your Honor? When I found out that neither of my 2 children were mine as confirmed by DNA testing, but had the same father, this meant that my wife had been cheating on me throughout the marriage. I am guilty of wanting her to also go through all the pain and sadness that her behavior caused me. I began to say she can now take comfort in knowing that every bit of emotion she's felt over the last few months is what I'm feeling too. It didn't matter that her emotions weren't based on facts. I should also note that all my requests to leave my confession behind were categorically rejected by her. At least I wasn't lying by omission like she had been doing for the last 12 years. I love our 2 children deeply and wanted her to accept my offer to leave everything behind. I was willing to try to forgive her for the sake of the children. Within 4 months, she had many chances to avoid this mess and save our marriage. She didn't. The assets were split in 2 and the judge also ordered shared custody of our 2 angels. A few months later, after finding out who the father was, I also won a lawsuit against Nancy's boss, who awarded me over $200,000 in past child support and other expenses because DNA showed he was the father. Then, after testimony from some of Nancy's employees and managers who knew about her long-term affair with her boss, my lawyer sued their company for a much larger sum.